here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that my Discord server has a bit of a misinformation problem. And this is part of this, of course, makes sense, because if you get ideologically captured to the point where you're only getting input from like certain places, like certain personalities, certain news organizations, that you sort of like extremely curate your news media diet to like a very, very limited stream, then you're going to get a very select set of facts and information. So I do, that's one thing to keep in mind when you're trying to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the world. It's like, okay, am I having like a broad perspective? Am I getting my information from a wide variety of sources, to the point where, and the reason why that's valuable, by the way, is because if you have like a very, very narrow select source of information, then let's say one or two or three of those sources are bad or are biased, either intentionally or unintentionally, because sometimes people get facts wrong on purpose, sometimes people get facts wrong on accident. It just happens. People are human. So let's say you only get like your information from a very few amount of sources. Then if they're like, hey, this thing that Trump did that was actually good, we don't like that people might think that it's good, so we're not going to say anything about that. Or on the right, of course, there might be a moment where Trump says or does something bad that they ignore because they don't want to make their viewers question their loyalty to Donald Trump. This is something that I believe Ground News, I want to say, would refer to as a blind spot for particular ideology. So that'd be like a right-wing blind spot would be Trump doing something bad. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I think that's one reason why we're seeing what's happening in my Discord server happening right now, is just some people only getting their information from certain sources, like David Pakman, for example. But there's also another thing that I'm noticing, which is like, and this sort of came to a head because it's very, very funny. So what's his name? Seymour or whatever? Yeah, Seymour. You can always rely on this dude to only say like negative things about Donald Trump. If Donald Trump does something like positive, it'll never be acknowledged. It was very funny because he was one of the main progenitors in the server of the whole like egg prices situation, right? The whole egg prices thing, because he was all whining about the egg prices. So I went and talked about it on the stream, and it was fair, some of the critiques he was making, right? It's like, oh, the egg prices aren't going down, but he was acting very concerned about the egg prices until the egg prices came up, and then he had nothing much to say. Right, so he is one character who's been saying these types of things about my Discord server, but I noticed this a lot more obviously or starkly when he made this post here. It wasn't today, it was yesterday, but he made this. He posted this picture from Snapchat, which is cancer, by the way. And this is a fake news headline from Bad News Daily. Everything about that sentence is hilarious to me. It's like, okay, you're getting your news from Snapchat from a source called Bad News Daily with an extremely hyperbolic title, not even sharing any information, by the way, just the picture. It just says Trump's new law ends Democratic elections forever. And I was like, I wonder why people feel comfortable posting blatant misinformation about this. And I do, because there is no law that Trump has put into place that will end Democratic elections forever. Now, I want to say he posted a link to the Snapchat story, and we can actually react to this here. Which window should we pull this up on? Right here. Okay. This is the Snapchat story that he's referring to. And the first thing I want to point out is that I watched this video, or part of this video already, pre-watching. The video doesn't even say what the headline is. So the headline is Trump's new law ends Democratic elections forever. That's the claim, right? But you go here, it's not the claim in the video is not going to be like that. Okay, Trump wants to run for a third term in 2028. I've heard some stuff about that. He said that he wants to do it. He hasn't like necessarily pushed super hard for that. But again, not a claim that's in the picture that he shared. But the second choice, wait, hold on. This is not, hold on. This is oh, here it is. Wrong video. It played the wrong video. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So Trump's new law ends democratic elections forever. This is the claim, okay? Now, you'd be surprised to find that the facts don't back up the argument here that's made in the headline. But it says, President Trump just signed an executive order on elections. But critics say it's a thinly veiled attempt at blocking legal Americans from voting. Very interesting to hear the complaints about the critics. That's not the real issue that the critics have, by the way. I find it interesting that they often complain about that, but the bar to entry for voting legally is very, very low, actually. If you can get a driver's license, right, that's a valid ID that one could then use to go vote. People arguing for, people who want to make it difficult to check whether or not someone can legally vote before they go to the polls, because that's what most of the critics here would be upset about. They're upset they're checking to see whether or not someone is voting legally or not. That just allows an underbelly of election fraud to occur, and that's what they want to preserve, right? Because if these critics were kind of more genuine, right, they would want you to like change the system in a way that, for example, allows legal Americans to have an easier path to having a photo ID that they could then present at a polling booth, for example. But no, that's not their primary goal there. This would prevent only a tiny amount of non-citizen voter registration. But I mean, if you can get like a driver's license and have an ID, and especially if you're paying taxes, you should be able to vote. I would say, right? There's a difference between non-citizens and illegal immigrants as well. I don't think that illegal immigrants would necessarily qualify to be able to get the type of ID that you would need under this. It's not even legislation; it's an executive order. But it would stop millions of eligible voters. How would it stop millions of eligible voters? They're not going to get to that, I doubt. I doubt they would get to that. Okay, here it is. The order requires voters to show proof of citizenship to register. Okay. Like passport or birth certificate that many Americans don't have readily available. But you should, and if you don't, that's your fault. If you don't have your birth certificate, something is terribly wrong. Something has gone wrong, and you need to rectify that immediately, because you don't need a birth certificate just to be able to vote. You need a birth certificate for not all sorts of things, but for some very important things, you do need your birth certificate. So if you don't have your birth certificate, that's not Trump's fault. It also says mail ballots should be received by election day. Okay, that's fair. The Attorney General shall take appropriate actions against states. Oh, okay, that's cool. That count ballots received after election day. Nice. Dude, this is goated. This is goated. So you know what this means, right? This means like no more like 7-day election cycles, right? No more counting votes 14 days after election day. This is good news, and it's kind of disheartening now that we're so polarized that it's like the Trump haters are now willing to oppose this, which I think is an objectively good legislation, just because Trump is supporting it, or because they perceive it as something that will hurt their chances in elections. Because Democrats aren't looking at this law, and actually the false claim in this video actually is saying, what was the false claim? It will end democratic elections forever. So this is literally out of self-interest. It's not them saying, oh, this is going to, harm the ability for legal Americans to vote. No, and they're actually tipping their hand there. The real complaint is that it will harm their chances of winning future elections. Oh, hold on. Stupid thing. It sent me back to the beginning of the video, and I can't fast forward. So we have to sit through all this. See, this is another reason why Snapchat is cancer. Imagine you're getting your news from Snapchat. Okay. Yes, we went through all this already. Actions against states. that count ballots received after election day. Okay, cool, awesome, based. 18 states currently allow ballots received after election day to be counted, as long as they are postmarked by election day, which also I understand why you would have that rule. If it's postmarked by a particular day, then it's not like you're counting legitimately late votes. The benefit, though, of Trump's policy is that you don't, the vote tallying doesn't just linger and last like forever and ever, which is another benefit. Trump claims the moves are needed to prevent fraud. Why no evidence of voter fraud in the U.S. election? Okay. Yo. Okay. Hold on. Wait. Do you, and this hold on, wait. Do you need evidence that there's been widespread voter fraud to take measures against it? No. And this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This is like saying, okay, you know, I know that you have plans to go out and get yourself some pepper spray, right? Because you want to be able to defend yourself in case someone attacks you. But there's no evidence that anyone would ever attack you. You've gone out into public many times and you've never been physically harmed. There is no proof that you will ever be attacked in the future. So you are not allowed to go get the pepper spray. Like, I will not let you buy this pepper spray. I will literally do what's it called? What's the illegal imprisonment or whatever, in order to prevent you from doing this. You absolutely must not get the pepper spray because there is no evidence that you would ever get attacked physically. That, like, you can take preventative measures against things that don't happen in a widespread fashion. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And this is like probably the weakest argument you could say too. It's like there's no evidence that there's widespread voter fraud, so we shouldn't take measures against voter fraud. Now they're citing Jasmine Crockett. I mean, hey, good for them, right? Anything that pushes Jasmine Crockett to the forefront of the left-wing political mind. But it says here, this ain't about security, it's suppression. Suppression. Okay. I'll just leave that alone. The order threatens to pull federal election funding from states that don't comply. Comply. Oh, okay, that's cool. Putting major financial pressure on them to fall in line. Nice. Trump is trying to make it harder for voters to fight back in the ballot box. Okay, buddy. Okay, grandma, back to bed, I think is what you would say, right? Hold on. The legal challenges to the order are already being prepared. I don't know how those are, as critics say, it oversteps the president's constitutional authority. I'm curious as to what those arguments are genuinely. I'm not even sure what those would be. Because if you make a policy that says, hey, you know, comply with the law or else we're going to withhold funding from you, I don't see any way that that's unconstitutional. It'd be the same way as if like Trump was to say, any state that's a sanctuary state, we will no longer give you any federal funding at all. That would also be a constitutional thing to do. It's very interesting. I do wonder, because if there are legal steps being taken, there have to be legitimate, or at least at the very least, like surface level, even if disingenuous, legal arguments that are being brought to the forefront here. Is this the beginning of the end of free relations in America? I'm sorry. But also, Bad News Daily. Okay, very interesting. Oh, they got the Oscar winner story on here, which I actually plan on covering at some point. Very cool. But, like, I just saw this and I was shocked that, like, just blatant misinformation would be spread like that on Snapchat, and they would feel like they wouldn't get any repercussions or they wouldn't be called out for this. Now, maybe they're just sort of assuming that folks like Seymour are just going to see this headline, assume that it's true, and then just like run with that. Now, maybe I give Gen Alpha too much credit, right? Maybe Seymour is probably the example of the typical Snapchat news consumer, and this is how people of Gen Alpha are consuming and accepting the news, right? There was also this one right here: Trump running for president in 2028, says Republicans. At least this headline is like factually accurate. Like, say Republicans is true, because at least like Steve Bannon has said that Trump is going to be president. There probably been like some MAGA cultists who have been saying that Trump is going to be our president in 2023, probably even in previous conventions. They did share this one right here. It says Trump, it says he's not joking about seeking a third term. But if we go to that, let's see. I think I had to put this through the archive.is meat grinder because it's paywalled. But Trump says he's not joking about seeking a third term in defiance of the Constitution. Trump did not rule out seeking a third term in office on Sunday, telling NBC News he was not joking about the possibility and suggesting there were methods to circumvent the 2-term limit laid out in the Constitution. Now, if you want to, the actual interview, as far as I can understand, was not actually posted online or even recorded. So this is as close as what I was able to find to the interview, which is Kristen Welker, who's the person who interviewed Donald Trump, but not an interview, but took this call.
President Trump called me this morning. We discussed a range of topics, including the possibility of him serving a third term. He's joked about it.
I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure.
But these were his most extensive comments.
That's not.
I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure.
But
I mean, that's not. I don't even know if that's hinting. I don't know. Well, I don't know why he would raise money for a future term. And maybe he's talking about leftover campaign funds, which, true, you can't use for personal use. You can only use it for campaign use. So he'd have to find a way to free those funds. Running for president again would be the only way to free those funds, basically.
these were his most extensive comments, yet he told me he's not joking. He said there are methods by which you could do it, but he said it's far too early to think about it. He said he's focused on his current job. At the same time, I did press him on those methods. There's been some discussion about the possibility of Vice President J.D. Vance running perhaps at the top of the ticket with President Trump running in the number 2 slot and then swapping if they were to win.
I don't know if that's allowed either. I don't know if that would work, because the thing is, you can't have more than 2 terms under the Constitution. You can't. So you have to either change the Constitution, which is one of the methods being mentioned here, or what else would it? Yeah, that's the only way, actually, because I'm pretty sure that if you become president by way of your being the vice president and the person at the top of the ticket no longer being president through whatever means that might be, resignation, getting killed or dying or whatever, one way or the other, I think it would still count as another term.
Trump telling me that is a method. He said there are other methods. I asked if he could give me details, and he said flatly no. Now, President Trump's allies have said that they are seriously looking at this.
We're working on there. We're not prepared to talk about it publicly, but in a couple of months, I think we will be.
Here's what
I do not like Steve Bannon. That dude is, I think, probably one of the most harmful forces for the right in general, because he gets the right wing to do things that are very like misinformed or just like distracting from what the right wing should be focused on. Particularly the MAGA wing, and I think that drags the whole political right down. I do not like Steve Bannon. I think generally most things that come from Steve Bannon's corner of conservatism are bad news.
Here's what you need to know, though. It is incredibly complicated to change the Constitution. Serving a third term is prohibited by the Constitution. So this is something that would be far out of reach by any measure. And again, President Trump insisting for right now, he's focused on his current job.
Now, if I'm going to take what he's saying here at face value, it seems to me that Trump wants to have a third term, but if other people can't make it happen, like if you can't change the Constitution to make it happen or whatever, he's not going to push too hard for it, right? Like the Blue Anon conspiracy theory is that Trump is going to by any means necessary just stay president until he dies and basically be like the king of America, right? That's the Blue Anon conspiracy theory, and that's why, you know, folks are pretty frantic whenever they see things like, I think even Seymour, I don't know if I call Seymour frantic on this one, but that's why he was so concerned, is because, you know, out of the Blue Anon corner, the conspiracy theory is that Trump is going to do whatever he can to get a third term. Now, these news organizations are, I mean, they're being a lot more honest, right? Because they're saying here, right, that, I mean, he said he was joking about wanting a third term. NBC News says doesn't rule out seeking a third term. ABC News also says doesn't rule out a third term. So not ruling it out and being interested in it doesn't mean that he's actively planning on doing it. He actually said that he's not actively planning out those methods. Steve Bannon and folks like him are the ones who are planning out those particular methods. And we could go into all of this, but I mean, I don't think we need to. We saw the closest thing that there is to the interview with NBC News. But I guess the question is, should Donald Trump take a third term? I think if people can make it happen, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him to take a third term. Now, I will say that at that point, I would have concerns about Donald Trump's mental and physical health, because I would estimate that around the time when Trump would take a third term, like in 2028, his health would be about where Joe Biden's health was kind of just before he took office in 2020. So especially by the end of a third term, I would be concerned as to whether or not Trump can coherently speak all the time and recall everything that he needs to recall on command. Right now, we're already seeing like some of that a little bit, not like too much, but just like sort of losing trains of thoughts and things. Not anything too serious as of yet, but I think that that's something to consider negatively. Now, if the Heritage Foundation people or whatever, who are the types of people who would do something like this, if they are going to remove term limits altogether, I think that'd be disastrous. I think optimally, you would not change the term limit thing at all. You would just say 2 years, that's it. Sorry, not 2 years. You would say 2 terms, that's it. But if that's not what you're willing to do, I would say at least set a firm term limit, a new one, like 3 terms, right? Set that and then stick to it. Because if you leave it open-ended, then you do get a situation where someone could be president for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 terms, depending on how popular you are, and that's not great. Now, I also have seen the people on the left somewhat excited about this because, or maybe they're just joking and making memes, but I have seen them on the left being somewhat excited about this because they're like, oh, well, this could potentially mean that Barack Obama could run for president again, which, like, by the way, Barack Obama versus Donald Trump would literally be like the all-star game of American politics. Like, we're talking about the two most popular and probably most liked living presidents of the United States, former or current, on both the left and the right. Barack Obama is extremely popular. He's extremely charismatic. He actually didn't damage the country too much as president of the United States, unlike what some on the right said that he would do. And Donald Trump is extremely popular on the right. There are many people who like him, and he's only getting more popular by the day. So I would be fascinated to see how this goes. It would be very much like, I don't know, seeing like LeBron and Jokic like doing a 1v1 in basketball, like playing 21 together. Like, I would pay good money to see that. I would also pay good money. I'd also pay good money to see Donald Trump go up against Barack Obama.